Bar, around 6 minutes. Ms. Minto.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And I too would like to thank those who gave evidence to the committee and also the clerks who have prepared this report. As a DPLR committee substitute, I had the pleasure of attending the first evidence session that the committee conducted, where evidence was presented by the Scottish Law Commission. I'll therefore focus my contribution on this evidence. I have to admit, I was transported back to being a first-year accountancy student at Aberdeen University, studying business law, where my only memories of the Sale of Goods Act was the Paisley Snail case, or Donoghue versus Stevenson. The Scottish Law Commission considered that Scots law is outdated and cumbersome and needs reforming to bring it up to international standards on movable transactions. The current legislation makes some transactions difficult or sometimes impossible to execute in Scotland, resulting in businesses having to use complicated workarounds, which take longer and are more expensive. The bill, as we have heard, proposes modernising the law on borrowing against movable property and intellectual property and creating an easier way for businesses to sell unpaid invoices to banks or other financial organisations. If the bill is not progressed, there is a distinct possibility that Scotland will fall further behind international norms, as small businesses and companies will be unable to access finance easily. Professor Andrew Stephen of the Scottish Law Commission, in his introduction, said, "The bill will make a difference to two areas, assignation and security over movable property. The last law reform in statute on assignation was in 1862, and he went on to say, on security or movable property, more widely, the bill would be the biggest reform since the Sale of Goods Act 1893. Now, in September 1893, Beatrix Potter was in Dunkeld, where she penned the first draft of the Tale of Peter Rabbit. I'm sure many in the chamber will know and love the story of Peter, a mischievous rabbit who disobeyed his mother, ate too many vegetables in Mr McGregor's garden, and to escape had to squeeze under a gate, losing his blue jacket and shoes in the process. Now, apart from being written in the same year as the legislation the Movable Transactions Scotland Bill is proposing to reform, why am I mentioning the Tale of Peter Rabbit? Well, what you might not know is that Beatrix Potter's book was turned down by many publishers. Some didn't like the illustrations, some felt it too long, others too short. So she decided to publish the book herself, and on the 16th of December 1901, the first 250 copies of her privately printed The Tale of Peter Rabbit were ready for distribution to family and friends. Now, Beatrix Potter was lucky enough to have the assets to be able to fund the publication herself, but many women in Scotland just now with fantastic ideas are unable to get the necessary finance because of the constraints of the cumbersome 1893 legislation. In 2019, more than 3/5 of new business start-ups were done so by men, so therefore less than 2/5 by women. It's often the case that a woman seeking business start-up finance does not have the heritable property, land or buildings needed as security, but has a very good business idea or creative project. To be able to raise finance over movable property that she has, perhaps her tools, a finished artwork, or returning to Beatrix Potter, her intellectual property, that might solve the problem. Items of value could form the security of the loan. As Lady Peyton, Chair of the Scottish Law Commission, said in evidence, this new statutory pledge would solve her problem and more women would be able to access finance. There is valuable international evidence that a modern movable transaction law helps women enter business. The report by the World Bank from 2019, Secure Transactions, Collateral Registries and Movable Asset-Based Financing, has a whole section on gender finance. The World Bank report gives examples of women entrepreneurs like Constance Swanaker in Ghana, an artist and founder of a small business designing furniture and home accessories, who could not move forward, but then was able to obtain a loan through movable asset-based financing. This loan has allowed Constance to expand her business, hiring 30 more employees. Now, I'd love to see something like this happening in Scotland. Another important occurrence in 1893, the year that this legislation, that this bill is proposing to modernise, was introduced, was the registering of Drambuie as a trademark for whisky-based liqueur by James Ross of Broadford Skye. Now, my next paragraph, I apologise if I insult anyone, but I'm sure you'll understand why I'm saying this. Though not produced in my constituency of Argyll and Bute, where I have heard some argue that the best Ushkabea is distilled, Drambuie remains a hugely important Scottish import. Whisky maturing in bonded warehouses is another example of where the Bill's proposed reforms on the delivery of possessory pledges could have benefits, as Paul Sweeney has highlighted. Professor Stephen noted that it is not currently clear under Scots law that a possessory pledge can be done by notifying to a custodier. This bill will provide the necessary clarification and perhaps help our whisky industry. In his evidence, he said, the statutory pledge lets one go a step further and grants security of the whisky in the company's own warehouse, rather than in the independent third-party warehouse. That is a definite step forward. Greater access to business finance will support innovation and productivity in line with our national strategy for economic transformation. This is a route to a strong economy with good, secured and well-paid jobs and growing businesses, which will maximise Scotland's strengths and natural assets to increase productivity and international competitiveness. Scotland must continue to be a nation of entrepreneurs and innovators, embracing the opportunities of new technology, boosting productivity and focusing resources on innovations that will all improve our economy and our society. Presiding officer, to conclude, and I hope my voice doesn't give up on me. The bill will make various types of commercial transactions more efficient and less expensive. Businesses will be able to take full advantage of their own assets to raise finance rather than relying on more riskier and expensive types of borrowing. This greater access to business finance will support innovation in line with our national strategy for economic transformation. Thank you.